Your Excellencies, Your Royal Highness, Minister, and also ladies and gentlemen, we are very, very thrilled to see you all here for the opening of the Copenhagen Climate Center. We've looked forward to this day for a long time, and we hope that we will have a interesting launch event and also following on with a panel discussion. To kickstart the launch event, I would very much like to invite the Crown Prince of Denmark to introduce the launch. Thank you very much.
Good morning. Thank you very much. And what a wonderful day to kick off some very positive event for Denmark and for the world, I hope, for the future. But so far, we start with Copenhagen. Dear friends, the recent trilogy of reports from the IPCC made it very clear once again, our planet is in a state of alert. As it heats up, nature is suffering as a consequence. And as a direct consequence, the necessary green global transition. Today's official launch of the United Nations Environment Programme Copenhagen Climate Center, now known as UNEP CCC, is an important step in that direction. I'm of course very proud that we in Denmark and the capital, Copenhagen, can accommodate the UNEP CCC. In Denmark, we have been engaged in developing green energy solutions way back since the 1970s, where oil crisis forced our politicians, engineers, and scientists to focus on energy efficiency and alternative energy sources. We have indeed been thinking green for centuries, and recently Denmark set the ambitious target of reducing emissions by 70% by the year 2030. On top of that, our capital is one of the greenest cities in the world. You can swim in the backyard here in your lunch break. Maybe not today, but in due time. And just on the other side in Nordhavn, you have the most recent example of how electricity and heating energy efficient buildings and electric transport can be integrated into an intelligent and smart energy system. But action within one country or one city will not be enough to exit the climate emergency. The world must come together to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and must come together to help developing nations and vulnerable communities to cope with the devastating impacts of the climate change. Denmark's climate strategy is founded on the principle of cooperation. The strategy commits Denmark to influencing others and together with the private sector to limit global warming, to shifting financial flows from fossil fuels to green, climate-friendly investments, and to helping those shouldering the biggest climate burden to cope and adapt. So hosting the UNEP CCC further shows Denmark's commitment to making these goals a reality. This new center builds on 30 years of work by its predecessors, including a hugely successful partnership with the UNEP and the Technical University of Denmark. This partnership brought science and solutions to bear on the climate crisis. Now these efforts are shifting up a gear. The UNEP CCC will support developing countries to move into a climate resilient and low carbon development. It will work to ensure that nobody is left behind. In closing, let me thank both UNEP and UNOPS for their commitment. With two such dedicated and inspirational bodies at the helm, I expect to see great things from the center as we move together to cope with climate change. Have a very good day so far.
Thank you very much for those kind words. I would like now to invite Her Excellency, the Minister for Environment in Denmark, Lea Wermelin.
Your Royal Highness, Excellencies, distinguished colleagues and guests joining us from all around the world. Good morning. I am really delighted to be here in the UN city of Copenhagen today, sunny Copenhagen. UNEP is a close partner to Denmark, and we are so pleased that the new UNEP Copenhagen Climate Center will be hosted here. Science has made it clear that climate change is widespread, intensifying, and will impact the poorest households the most. The latest IPCC report, published just earlier this month, has demonstrated that we must act now. The message is painfully clear. Greenhouse gas emissions must peak by 2025 if we shall limit future global warming to 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial levels. And Denmark is fully committed to be a global green frontrunner. Our goal is a 70% emission reduction by 2030 and climate neutrality by 2050. It requires a multi-sector approach where energy consumption, productive growth, and nature conservation goes hand in hand. We will also help lead the global green transition, and our support to the UNEP Copenhagen Climate Center is a very good example of our global commitment. In the current quite turbulent times, a light of hope exists. If we can establish the right political frameworks, we have the technologies that can pave the way towards carbon neutrality. And we possess the knowledge of how to protect our nature and environment to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and adapt to the consequences of climate change. But of course, this will require bold commitment, not only from governments, but also the private sector and civil society across the globe. The UNEP Copenhagen Climate Center is exactly established to provide and spread the knowledge needed to act and find new low-carbon pathways for developing countries and emerging economies. And I truly welcome the mandate of the center, contribution of knowledge and bridging the gap between science and policy-oriented climate actions. The ambition of the center is to support climate actions that can be scaled up on a global or regional level, for instance, off-grid solar technology in East Africa or improved early warning systems in Sri Lanka. The center also has the ambition of influencing the international climate framework and negotiations. The emissions gap report and the adaptation gap report are both good examples on how the center contributes with high-value inputs to the political processes for keeping the 1.5 degree climate target alive. Before ending, I would like to emphasize that the three planetary crises, climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution, are interlinked and mutually reinforcing each other. So we therefore need to find smart but also joint solutions to all three crises across sectors and stakeholders. And to this end, the UNEP Copenhagen Climate Center has an important role to play. So I would like to end by congratulating all of us for all of the hard work to be here today, and I really look forward, as His Royal Highness, to see all of the results in the coming years. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to Minister Wermelin for those kind words. I would now like to introduce the next speaker, Under Secretary General and Executive Director of UNEP, Inger Andersen.
Thank you. Being here today is a very special day. Your Royal Highness, thank you so much for coming. We are very, very grateful. And Your Excellency Minister Lea Wermelin, thank you for journeying to Nairobi first and now to the UNEP Climate Center, UNEP Copenhagen Climate Center. Grete, my sister, thank you for your service. And ambassadors, ladies and gentlemen, and colleagues, thank you very much for all this great work. As I think His Royal Highness just said, we are in a climate emergency. The latest trilogy of IPCC reports, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, told us that climate change is disrupting our world, the natural world, undermining development and threatening millions with poverty. They told us that we're still not doing enough to respond by cutting greenhouse gas emissions, confirming the findings of UNEP's 2021 emissions gap report by prioritizing adaptation measures. A gap report, I should say, published in collaboration with this center. So this is an emergency of our own making. The last 2 decades saw the highest increase in emissions in human history, even though scientists have warned us for 30 years about the consequences. We saw the kitchen was burning, but instead of reaching for the fire extinguisher, we turned the oven up. Had we started serious cuts to emissions in 2010 or sooner, we would be looking at a much easier task. But now we must almost halve greenhouse gas emissions by 2030 to have a chance of limiting global temperature rise to 1.5 degrees. Indeed, the report that we issued under IPCC just 2 weeks ago, I think it was, at the press conference, tells us that if we have to peak by 2025, that's 3 years from now, peak in our emissions load and reduce by 27% by 2030. We can't afford any more delays. We cannot afford any half measures. We need to increase action on both climate mitigation and adaptation to reach the climate goals and to preserve a livable planet for all. But we can still do it. But only if the biggest polluters urgently deal with their own emissions and crucially help developing nations to leapfrog to cleaner, greener technology and natural solutions that slow climate change and help communities adapt. And here the UNEP Copenhagen Climate Center, or UNEP CCC, has a key role to play, placed in this space, in this city, in this country, and delivering this kind of expertise that the center has, by filling the gaps in knowledge and supporting developing nations. Right now, we need transformations of all parts of society and economy. To enable such convincing action, we need knowledge sharing, data availability, and accessibility, all of which are key to building the scientific basis for good policies and economic decisions. Transparency is also key and critical to maintain the confidence that people are doing what they promised, and so that we can help developing countries, which obviously stand to suffer the most from climate change. By linking science and policy, UNEP CCC will make science more accessible, more trusted, more democratic and accessible such, and more useful, thus contributing to the transformations that we need. So friends, the center can make a real difference as it is built on very solid pillars. We have the government of Denmark's unwavering support, we have UNEP's operational skills, and we have strong history. The center's staff are stellar, and I am so proud of the people who work in the center. They come from UNEP's previous partnerships with the Technical University of Denmark, the DTU, and before that, with the UNEP Research Partnership. It was under these guises that the Emissions Gap Report series was produced, a series that contributed greatly to international climate agenda. My thanks to the government of Denmark and to UNEP, and of course, to the staff who've already achieved so much. With this base to build on, we are set for success. The center will support developing countries as they move on to climate resilient and low carbon development paths. The center will be a vital part of UNEP's mission to deliver compelling science and solutions. It will facilitate international collaboration. Through its work, I expect that the Center will help the world exit the climate emergency and shape a safer and more peaceful world. Thank you.
Thank you very much for these kind words. I would now like to invite Under Secretary General and Executive Director of UNOPS, Grete Farmo. Thank you.
Thank you, and Your Royal Highness, Excellencies, colleagues, honourable guests. On behalf of UNOPS and UN City, it is my real pleasure to welcome you all here this morning to the opening ceremony of the Copenhagen Climate Centre. I would like to thank His Royal Highness the Crown Prince for your remark, and also Minister Wermelin, and of course my sister colleague Inger. And I was thinking, it's two Nordic sisters that are now doing this together, and we will show force together. But we need the support from all of you. And as Your Royal Highness accurately stated, Denmark is a world leader in sustainability and climate-friendly energy solutions. There is much to learn. There is much to learn from the Danish experience, and there are few countries more suitable to host this new center. A center dedicated to science-based analysis and to supporting nations in their environmental decision-making to meet their targets based on the Paris Agreement and the Sustainable Development Goals. And Your Royal Highness, you used an important word in your speech: partnerships. At UNOPS, the organization that I lead, we speak a lot about partnerships as being the secret ingredient to achieving shared goals and ambitions. At the beginning of 2020, the Secretary General of the UN stated that we are now in the decade of action, with us entering the final 10 years to achieve our goals. With everything that has happened in the last 2 years alone, the challenge is to deliver on those 17 ambitious goals by 2030 has never been harder. To put it simply, without effective partnerships and dedicated teamwork, we will not meet the targets of the Paris Agreement or the Sustainable Development Goals. Indeed, that is probably why partnerships in itself is a goal, the Sustainable Development Goal number 17. In UN City, we are 11 members of the UN family, and we have also friends from the World Bank here that have the privilege of working together. That's more than 1,800 people representing more than 100 different countries. Under one roof, we promote the values of collaboration and a unified vision towards supporting the member states and the Sustainable Development Goals. So this is an ideal location for today's opening, looking at how we can strengthen the ways we work together for a more sustainable future. While this is the opening of a new center, it also marks the continuation, as Inga mentioned, of a strong legacy. As already highlighted, the new Copenhagen Climate Centre is built upon the strong foundations of the decades-long partnerships between UNEP and the Technical University of Denmark, with the support of the Danish Ministry of Foreign Affairs. It is important to acknowledge the contribution this partnership has played. Without it, we would not be standing here today. On behalf of UNOPS, I can say what a privilege it is to provide the operational support to this new initiative and join the story at such an important chapter. And we are looking forward to working closely with the Centre and its staff in achieving their goals and the goals of our partners. Within the United Nations, UNOPS has a mandate for infrastructure, and we are committed to supporting climate action and tackling the climate emergency. Our commitment is backed by both our decades of practical experience and our research, and through leadership on the role of infrastructure in achieving key development and climate targets. Last year, in the lead up to the COP26 in Glasgow, UNOPS launched a key report together with UNEP and the University of Oxford that showed infrastructure is responsible for 79% of all greenhouse gas emissions, as well as 88% of all adaptation costs. And these findings are truly stark. They show that the infrastructure decisions made now are key to settling the course of our future climate. Yet our current infrastructure choices are endangering the objectives of the Paris Agreement and the SDGs. And that is why we call together for radical changes in how we plan and implement our infrastructure needs. So together with our ongoing work in more than 80 countries around the world, we promise to continue our contribution to tackling the climate emergency. And now with our ongoing work with UNEP and the Copenhagen Climate Centre, we stand committed to ideals of partnership to create a fairer, more peaceful and prosperous life for people while protecting our planet. Thank you.
Thank you very much to Grete. On behalf of myself and the staff of the UNEP Copenhagen Climate Centre, I would now like to close the proceedings and thank His Royal Highness, Your Excellencies and honourable guests for being here with us today. And before we close completely, I would like to invite the speakers for a family photo. Thank you.